Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz here in our Northwest Side studio.
And I'm Brandis Friedman reporting live in Chicago's Sauganash neighborhood.
On the show tonight,
as of this morning, about 3,500 vaccinations out of those deliveries had already been given.
all Illinois hospitals and health departments promised the first round of COVID vaccine now have it. An update on the effort to extinguish the virus. And then we take a look at the efficacy and safety of the COVID vaccine with the head of the University of Illinois Health Infectious Disease Department.
They bring a little bit of hope.
How Chicago's Sauganash neighborhood is finding the bright side this holiday season. A proposal introduced at City Council would hike air pollution fines to as much as $50,000.
Montgomery on 1st and 10 is running back in a hole, and then he's off with a nice stiff arm, and it's a foot race down the sideline.
The Bears break a 6-game skid, but can they keep their faint playoff hopes alive against the Vikings? Jeffrey Bayer on Chicago's surprisingly beautiful utility buildings in an all-new Ask Jeffrey.
I'm Angel Ito, and tonight I'll have more on a mural that's honoring both healthcare workers and the community they serve.
And Paris, as I mentioned, I'm in Sauganash, where I'll be co-anchoring tonight's program as a part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. You can tell by looking around me that this is a neighborhood that loves a good Christmas lights display. We'll talk about that, but also about how schools and businesses in this community have been impacted by the pandemic. But for now, back to you.
Right around the corner from us. All right, we'll see you in just a bit. And now some of today's top stories. Chicago police announced a 15-year-old is in custody in connection with the shooting death of former firefighter Dwayne Williams. Williams was shot and killed in an alleged botched carjacking. The 15-year-old is charged as a juvenile with murder, and police say he was one of 3 alleged offenders who tailed Williams to a popcorn shop on the south side and then shot and killed him in an altercation when Williams came out.
The fact that this murder took place as a result of a car being taken is something that is so tragic for this family that we owe it to this victim and his family to bring everyone, regardless of their age, to justice on this case.
And police officials say they're looking for 2 other suspects involved. Meanwhile, another mea culpa from the mayor today and a promise for reform to no-knock search warrants. This in the wake of the release of the police body cam video of Anjanette Young, wrongly the target of a police raid in 2019. The mayor reversed statements from yesterday saying she wasn't aware of Young's case before learning of the video this week. Lightfoot now says she did receive emails early on in her tenure about the wrongful raid into Young's house, but she says today she didn't recall them. Lightfoot also says she's announcing a tightening of rules for police officers to act on search warrants.
It's been painful and upsetting. But I think this gives us an opportunity to look at what happened from top to bottom.
Lightfoot was non-committal on whether or not she'd asked for the resignation of City Corporation Counsel Mark Flessner after that office went to court to attempt to block CBS 2 Chicago from airing that body-worn video in their news report. Full steam ahead for Cook County's plan to offer reduced rates on Metro Electric and Rock Island lines. The $35 million Fair Transit pilot program will reduce fares on those lines by up to 50% to help commuters on the south and southwest sides. Pilot is expected to launch early next year and include enhanced service on some south suburban PACE bus lines as well. The idea is to provide CTA-style rates and service to transit-starved areas of the south side. And state public health officials report 8,800 new cases of the coronavirus in the last 24 hours, with 181 additional deaths. That makes for a total of 879,000 cases and 14,835 deaths. The 7-day test positivity rate has ticked down a notch to a flat 10%. Illinois received the first half of its coronavirus vaccine allotment on Monday. Now the rest of that initial allotment promised by the feds has arrived. There's hope on one hand that the vaccine can be stretched. On the other hand, there are concerns about the feds cutting the number of doses Illinois gets next week in half. Amanda Vinicky joins us now with more. Amanda.
Yeah, Paris, with state troopers as escorts, Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine has made it from the Illinois National Strategic Stockpile to 77 hospitals across the state, into Chicago area hospitals as well. Naperville's Edwards, Mount Sinai, Rush, and Roseland, whose CEO Tim Egan says he couldn't be happier about it.
We've been the tip of the sword here in the fight against COVID since the very beginning. We showcased that we could handle the testing program. We've tested over 25,000 people at our hospital, and we certainly have shown and given proof that we can handle the vaccination program as well.
Rosen received 975 doses of the vaccine, more than enough to cover the hospital's entire staff and affiliated doctors. Egan says, unlike hospitals that put nurses and doctors at the front of the line, Roseland took a different approach today when its first 5 employees got the shot.
We spread it out amongst our family because this battle against COVID isn't just fought by doctors and nurses. It's fought by our entire family, and that's our support service lines. So to have an engineer, to have one of our environmental service folks, to have someone from the lab join one of our outstanding doctors and our outstanding chief nurse officer was just a breath of fresh air for the whole vaccination program itself. So we spread the wealth, and we got all service lines involved.
Egan says the hospital is running and gunning to get everyone a vaccine, at least those who agree to it. It won't be mandatory, but it is encouraged. To combat skepticism, particularly rampant in the African-American community, he says Roseland will work to educate employees and plans to launch an I Got It campaign. Remaining vaccine will go to community partners like ambulance drivers.
And they're on the front lines. They didn't get any allotment of vaccine, and they certainly are deserving of getting vaccinated as frontline warriors. So we're going to help them out too.
Over at Rush, priority for the vaccine is given to those who interface most often and most directly with coronavirus patients. The hospital's vaccine clinic was bustling late this afternoon as doctors and nurses began to get inoculated. I spoke with an emergency doctor who says between 30 to 70 COVID patients come through the ER there daily, many of whom are quite sick.
It's surreal. You know, it's surreal to think that we've been battling this for over a year now. We thought we had control of it, but obviously we've had peaks. It feels kind of cathartic. It's, hopefully this is the beginning of the end. And the more people we can vaccinate and get better control of this, the sooner it'll be over.
Getting the vaccine is also not mandatory at Rush. Dr. Lewis Hunter says he did his research reading the Pfizer and Moderna studies before signing up to get it.
It doesn't penetrate the human cell. The science is pretty straightforward. Is there always a concern? Sure. But I think at this point, we all feel it's pretty safe to get.
Rush's clinic has an area where everyone who gets the vaccine is then supposed to go sit and rest for a while afterward, similar to how you wait a bit after donating blood. So in the rare event someone may have an allergic reaction, well, there are doctors nearby and you're sitting down. There is a chance that Rush and others with the vaccine will be able to stretch it some. While each vial was originally thought to have enough for only 5 doses, the FDA says it is now possible there's enough for 6 or even 7 doses.
What has to be clear is that any remaining vaccine that is in the vial that does not equal a full dose cannot be combined with remnants from other vials. We don't want to waste any vaccine, but it's also critical that we make sure that every individual receives a full, safe, and effective dose of vaccine.
Illinois Public Health Director Dr. Ngozi Ezike says there's no way to predict how many extra doses that may create, but it does come as states, including Illinois, say they are unsure when and how many additional shipments will be coming. The governor yesterday announcing Illinois' next shipment was slashed by the feds in half. Pfizer this afternoon put out a statement saying that it has and will continue to work with Operation Warp Speed and that it successfully shipped the 2.9 million doses the government asked it to. Pfizer is not having any production issues with our COVID-19 vaccine, and no shipments containing the vaccine are on hold or delayed. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but as of now, we have not received any shipment instructions for additional doses, the statement reads. ZK and the governor say they nonetheless are not concerned there won't be enough vaccine for those who are getting it now to be able to get that second required dose in 3 weeks' time. Rush nurse Terry Gallagher works in an isolation facility for COVID patients who have nowhere else to go and admits that caring for those with the virus can be scary.
It's a calculated risk, but it's a risk that we feel it is our responsibility as nurses to take care of this population and to ensure that everyone is cared for.
Now that she has gotten the vaccine, Gallagher says she is still going to wear a mask and all that PPE, but she says getting the vaccine feels like an extra layer of protection.
I have family and friends that I haven't hugged in 8 or 9 months, and I'm very excited at the possibility of that again.
She says it's likely that her loved ones will be getting those hugs in about 21 days' time after her vaccination is complete. Now, by the way, I asked Gallagher how it physically felt to get the shot, and she said that it was just fine, no biggie. But she also told me that she likes to give shots. So on that account, at least if you're somebody who is squeamish about needles like me, not sure that she's wholly trustworthy. Back to you, Paris.
Clearly she's not as squeamish as you are, Amanda. All right, thank you very much. And now to Phil Ponce with more about COVID-19 vaccine safety. Phil.
Paris, as Pfizer's vaccine is administered this week, there is hope the country is turning the corner on the pandemic. While previous polls show public favor growing for a COVID vaccine, some people still have their doubts. This as there are reports of allergic reactions in a handful of healthcare workers in Alaska and the UK. Joining us to discuss the safety and effectiveness of the COVID vaccine is Dr. Richard Novak, head of the Infectious Disease Division at the University of Illinois Hospital and Health Sciences System. Dr. Novak, thank you for joining us. First of all, a very basic question that is, and you just mentioned to me before we went on the air that you were getting the vaccine personally tomorrow. To others, how do you describe how safe the vaccine is?
Well, so far it appears that these vaccines are as safe as the flu shot. The side effects are real, but they're minor. The people will may get fever, they will get body aches, they might get some fatigue and headaches. Those are the most common side effects. They are common, but they are short-lived and they're not severe. Nothing that can't be dealt with some Tylenol or ibuprofen, and they're usually gone in a day or two.
How about those healthcare workers, 2 in Alaska and 2 in the UK, who had more than just mild reactions to the vaccine? Is that a concern?
Well, it's a concern with any pharmaceutical product. Allergic reactions can occur in anybody. They're rare, but they are dangerous when they occur, and to the degree that they've had those. And fortunately, it's only a small minority of people who get them. Usually those people know that they are at risk because they have allergies to other things.
Speaking of people at risk, are there folks who you would flat out say, no, given your individual health, not a good idea to get the vaccine?
Well, so if somebody has a history of severe allergic reactions and they have to carry an EpiPen with them because they know they might encounter something just in the food they ate or something they encounter in the environment, they might be at risk and they might want to hesitate to get it. But for the most part, I'd recommend it for everybody. And the CDC does actually recommend it for almost everybody.
How about somebody who has a weakened immune system because of chemotherapy or because they've been taking immunosuppressive medication? How about people who fall into those categories?
Well, that's a good question. And we didn't test those people in the vaccine trials because we knew they wouldn't get a very good reaction to the vaccine in terms of an immune response. But it's still recommended that they get vaccinated because whatever immune response they get will be better than no immune response.
This is not a live virus vaccine. So if a person thinks of other vaccines who think, oh, they include a trace of the vaccine so that I build up an immunity to it, that's not the case with this vaccine. Is that right?
Correct. This is not a live attenuated virus, and those types of vaccines are not recommended for people who are immunosuppressed because they may replicate. But this is not a replicating vaccine. It causes the cells to make a protein, but the RNA that's given is degraded.
And we've heard varying statistics, most of them in the mid 90% range. How do you describe how effective these vaccines are?
I think it's remarkable how effective these vaccines are. Both Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are in the 95% efficacy range. And what's even more striking is they're both very similar vaccines. They were tested independently in very large clinical trials, and they came up with nearly identical results, which I think is a testament to the validity of the science.
Once a person is vaccinated, can he or she still give the virus to somebody else?
Well, we don't know the answer to that, actually. That's ongoing transmission after vaccination. We don't know. The vaccine won't give you the infection, but if you get infected and you've been given the vaccine, we don't know how much that reduces viral shedding. That's something that we weren't able to test in these trials.
According to a Pew Research Center survey conducted last month, about 60% of Americans say that they will definitely or probably get vaccinated, while about 21% say they do not intend to get vaccinated and are pretty certain that additional information would not change their minds. How could a significant portion of people not getting vaccinated affect the rest of the people who are getting vaccinated?
Well, that's a very important question. What we're trying to achieve is herd immunity ultimately, which means that about 70% of the population will be immune to the virus. That will allow the pandemic to basically fade away. If fewer people get vaccinated, that will be hard for that to happen. There'll still be a subgroup of people who will continue to spread the virus amongst themselves. And so we need to do a good job of engaging those people and trying to assuage their fears about the vaccine.
Doctor, if you were in an elevator with somebody who did not want to get the vaccine and you had 25 seconds to convince them to get the vaccine, what would you say to that person?
I would say that, while you may be afraid of the vaccine, I think you need to also be afraid of getting COVID-19, which we know has significant long-term side effects and is very unpredictable and could result in really severe illness or death.
Dr. Novak, thank you so much for your insights. We very much appreciate your help. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And now, Paris, we go back to you.
Thanks, Phil. And not too far from our Chicago Tonight studios here on the northwest side is the small historic neighborhood of Sauganash. Known for its architecture, this community is on the National Historic Registry because it was developed by George Kester and Henry Zander in the early 1900s. Today, it's a tree-lined community just inside the city border with Lincolnwood that some neighbors there call the suburbs within the city. It's also popular for its Christmas lights, which Brandis Friedman, who's in Sauganash right now, can tell us all about for this week's stop on our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Brandis, looking all festive there behind you.
Yeah, I did that. I put these up just for you.
Oh, thank
Actually,
you.
Parrots, as you can see, you're welcome. The neighbors here, they obviously love to light up the night here in Sauganash. And even on the drive on my way over here, that short drive from the station, I was treated to quite the display of lights on the way. So, for example, one neighbor, Mark DeSecchi, has been decorating almost every foot of his front yard for the last 16 years, collecting different pieces over the years. He says even though his neighbors thank him for his decorations, which take a couple of weeks for him to put up, he just does it as his hobby. And in a season when so many people have been trapped inside, he is noticing more foot traffic in front of his home. Now, this yard has everyone from the abominable snowman to the elf on the shelf, the Peanuts gang, of course, Santa and the nativity scene. And as much as he loves them all, DeSecchi says he does have a few favorites.
Two elves spinning, they're kind of beat up. I gotta have somebody paint them for me one of these years. But they're Freddie and Eddie, which were my dad and uncle's name. Santa on the sleigh, I get up there, it's in 3 parts. That's probably my oldest. The nativity scene we've had for about 10 years. My wife bought it for me with the kids and all that for Christmas.
Now, as much as Sauganash is known for its lights, its neighbor to the north, the village of Lincolnwood, is as well, with sometimes even bigger displays. But DeSecchi says there's no friendly competition because everyone enjoys taking part in making the community brighter. So obviously these are both good neighborhoods to drive through if you just want to get a good look at some lights this season. Now, the coronavirus hasn't been as devastating to this community as it has been for some others. The test positivity rate here is at 8.4% compared to the citywide rate of 11.8. But what has been a challenge here is the economic impact. Much of the commercial strip in this area is along Cicero and Peterson. They include a handful of restaurants, agencies for insurance and real estate, flower shops with a couple of big anchor businesses like the Smith Corcoran Funeral Home and the Polish National Alliance. But for those businesses that do depend on foot traffic, like restaurants, we're told they're only making about 25 to 30% of their business.
The interesting part is they're family-owned businesses, so it's their family that works there. So they may only have 1 or 2 employees, and I know a couple of them have tried very hard to keep their employees, so they have. They've limited their hours a little bit.
And one restaurant decided to open during this pandemic. Just about 2 months ago, the husband and wife owners of the Sauganash Grill both worked in downtown hotels and were laid off during the pandemic. So they decided to make a go of something that they had always talked about. Glenda Munoz says they had to take the chance.
If you don't take a chance, you're not going to know if something's going to be better. So, you know, a lot of restaurants are closing, but we're opening, so people want to eat.
Now, as we mentioned, this is a smaller neighborhood. There are just 2 schools here. One of them is Queen of All Saints. That's an archdiocese school. And the other is Sauganash Elementary School. It's a CPS school. So one school has been on remote learning all school year. The other has been in person. And of course, that could change in January. And as a community of families, many people here are juggling whether to send their kids to school for in-person learning. Sauganash Elementary School local school council chair and parent Elaine Fitzgerald says her family opted for in-person learning when it begins, but every family is just trying to make the best choice for themselves.
Sort of limelight is on the physicalness of the building, right? And that's a constraint. It's something that needs to be addressed. We can't, unfortunately, just expand and shrink these buildings when we need to make room for them. So, we're doing the best we can, again, with the resources we're given.
Now, coming up later, we'll also hear from a parent at that Queen of All Saints school. We'll also talk to that parent about why the holiday lights, why the Christmas lights in this community are such an important part of it. And we'll also talk to the Cook County Commissioner here, Bridget Gaynor. That's coming up a little bit later on. Paris, back to you.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Thank you, Brandis. And up next, a preview of Sunday's matchup between the Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings. So please stick around.
Can get past the idea of turning this into a political topic and really get to serving our communities, that's something I can get behind.
Maybe we can use this as a calling card to unite.
We have a lot of news ahead, including a proposal to hike fines for air pollution violations. But first, the Bears played perhaps their most complete game in 2 years, breaking a 6-game losing streak last week against Houston. Up next, the Bears host the Minnesota Vikings as they fight to keep their faint hopes of a wild card berth alive. Joining us now with more is former Chicago Bears offensive lineman James Big Cat Williams. Big Cat, great to see you.
Hey, Paris, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. So let's before we get to the Bears, some news in the sports world. There's a case before the Supreme Court, and then there's also a bill proposed in Congress to pay college football players to give them a chunk of some of that huge revenue that college football makes. Is it time to pay college athletes, do you think?
Oh, it's past time. It is past time. You're talking about young athletes that are out there performing for these colleges and universities and seeing nothing from it. But yet and still these colleges and universities are getting tons of money to, stimulate their programs. They have enough that they can help these students out with not only medical bills, but things after their athletic college careers are over. Because as you know, only what, maybe 2 or 3% of them are ever going to make it to the next level, whether that be NBA, NFL, professional soccer. So to be able to supply these kids with something, I think it's a great idea.
And we know college football and all college sports, or at least basketball, football, they make so much money, billions of dollars, sponsorships. There's so much money floating around there. All right, let's talk about the Bears. They broke their losing streak last weekend. What should we read into this game? Is it an improving team right now with 3 games left, or was it just a really bad Houston team?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you're seeing an offense that is getting a little comfortable in its own skin. They've finally figured out exactly what they are and what Mitch is. And to combine that with a bad Texans team, you get a 36-point performance. But things are going to get a little more difficult. And they're going to have to, if they're able to stay on the same path, if they can stay consistent with the things that they've been doing with Mitch, I think they'll be okay for the next couple games.
Seems like they've been pretty consistent with a good running game the last few weeks, which was completely absent in the beginning of the season. David Montgomery busted out for an 80-yard touchdown run. What's been the key to turning that running game around?
Well, I think you have to, first and foremost, look at that offensive line. It's revamped. You've got a new starting center. You've moved your old starting center to left guard. In white hair, you've got Bars coming in and playing the right guard position. Fetty, who was playing right guard, is now out at right tackle. So they've moved that entire line around, and they've put people in positions that are cohesive for them. You look at what Sam Mustipher's doing, a free agent that has come in and, just kind of put his stamp on things right now, which is a good thing to see.
Yeah, it's good to see some consistency with that lineup. Also, Mitch Trubisky had one of his best games in years. It always seems to be he's on the verge here. Maybe this is going to be where he turns the corner. Is there anything that in the next 3 games, if he plays lights out, would you say, well, maybe he is the Bears quarterback of the future? Maybe they ought to think about bringing him back when his contract expires this year.
Well, that all depends. It all goes through Nagy and Pace. You know what you have in Mitch. You know that you've seen the last couple weeks that Mitch is a good get out of the pocket, read half of the field, give him high-low reads as far as a running back, a wide receiver, or a tight end and a wide receiver, and let him make those choices. When you're sitting back in the pocket and you put him on a 7-step drop and you're asking him to read the whole field, we've seen for the last 3 years that that's just not what he does well. So do what he does well and let's see how it works.
And it seemed like that's what they did all last Sunday. There's a lot of talk that the Bears chairman, George McCaskey, is frustrated with the struggles and he's going to just clean house. If you had to predict, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that Ryan Pace, the general manager, his job is going to be in jeopardy? Matt Nagy, the head coach, on down to Mitch Trubisky?
Well, I think anytime you're on a 6-game losing streak, everybody's job's on the line, from the general manager down to your punter. Everybody's job is on the line, but they have to go out and produce. They are still in the chase for the playoffs. No matter how slim it is, that is one of the striving factors that keeps that locker room going. So for them to come out and be able to move the ball on offense, put up points, allow that defense to play from ahead, which they really haven't done lately in the last couple of years, it's good to see, and it puts a good feeling in that locker room. Now, it's going to take more than good feelings to beat some of these other teams. The Texans weren't that good. They were a 4-8 team coming into the game. Detroit wasn't that good, but they lost to Detroit. So they have to be on their game, and they have to make sure that with that offense, they eat up clock, they put points on the board, and they allow that defense to pin their ears back and go after people.
And so they're going up against the Vikings team with the same record. Seems to be pretty similarly matched with them. What do they have to do? Well, you mentioned, running the ball, milking that clock. What scares you about the Vikings?
Well, the Vikings are a better defense. they're better than the Texans. They're better than Detroit. So we're going to have an opportunity to see what the Bears have called in the last couple of weeks, whether or not they're able to do these same things against a step up in class as far as defenses go and defensive coaches.
All right, James Big Cat Williams, those faint playoff hopes are still alive. I know how you hope the rest of the season goes, and all Bears fans hope there's something to play for over the next few weeks. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
You too, Bears. Take it easy, man.
All right, you too. And make sure to tune in next week when we preview the Bears matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, why Mayor Lightfoot proposes hiking fines for air pollution violations to as much as $50,000. A neighborhood of families, how the coronavirus is impacting residents in Chicago's far northwest neighborhood of Sauganash. Jeffrey Baird talks about the strikingly ornate history of Chicago's utility buildings in this week's Ask Jeffrey, and how a mural at a healthcare facility is encouraging resiliency in a Northwest Side community. But first, some more of today's top stories. Some healthcare workers at UIC and UI Health say they are not getting pay raises that they were promised. Members of the Illinois Nurses Association and SEIU Local 73 went on strike this summer over pay and COVID workplace protections. They say they were promised both pay raises and retroactive pay, but several members of SEIU say the healthcare system has yet to make good on those promises for several healthcare workers, even though a contract was signed to end this walk-off.
You already promised, you signed it, that we will get our pay. You agreed to this. So pay us. We need to pay our bills. We need to feed our families.
A spokesperson for UIC responded with a statement saying that all provisions of the contract will be implemented and all individuals will be paid as provided in the contracts. No dice for Chicago Teachers Union members who want to delay CPS's proposed return to in-person learning. CTU says it's going to take CPS to court after a state labor board today rejected an injunction to halt the CPS plan to reopen schools for in-person learning starting early next year. This is the second time the labor board has denied CTU's request for injunctive relief on school openings this year. CPS plans to welcome pre-K and cluster learning students back on January 11th and K through 8th grade students on February 1st. And state public health officials report 8,800 new cases of the coronavirus in the last 24 hours, with 181 additional deaths. That makes for a total of 879,000 cases and 14,835 deaths. The 7-day test positivity rate has ticked down to a flat 10%. If passed, a proposal introduced at this week's City Council meeting would significantly hike fines for air pollution as much as $50,000. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. Hey, Patty, good to see you. So remind us what the mayor put forward at this Wednesday City Council meeting.
Right, she's actually putting more teeth behind the existing fines, which right now for air pollution violations max out at $5,000. So she's created this sort of stair-step approach where now for a first violation, one offense, it maxes out at like $10,000. Second offense goes up to $15,000 max. Then third and successive violations max out at like $20,000. And then there's kind of a hammer for $50,000 if there's sort of an egregious or willful offense or violation of air pollution standards.
Remind us what spurred this proposal into action.
Right. Well, these are applying to these like sort of larger industrial facilities and demolition contractors. And the fact that demolition contractors that create dust is specifically referenced in the language that so clearly harkens back to the Hilco botched demolition at the Crawford coal plant, where there was that implosion that sent that plume of dust into the little village neighborhood. There's also references to General Iron, and they're clearly trying to crack down on what we would consider repeat offenders or serial polluters and fugitive dust. People, essentially this refers a lot to not containing dust, not containing particles that can be windborne. So that seems to be what this is aimed at.
And it's a hot topic right now with that proposed General Iron move from Lincoln Park down to the southeast side. All right, Patty, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now we check back in with Brandis Friedman, who spent the day reporting in Sauganash on Chicago's far northwest side as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Brandis.
That's right, Paris. And as we mentioned earlier, we're joined now by Cook County Commissioner Bridget Gaynor. She represents the 10th District, which includes part of Chicago's North Side. Of course, that includes Sauganash. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So first, what is your reaction to the reduction in the amount of vaccine that's coming to Illinois?
Well, I mean, it's demoralizing and it's depressing because you know all the people who need it desperately, and then you know all the people that want it to go on living their lives and reopening the economy.
So the vaccine rollout, obviously, it's top of mind for a lot of people. Going to be a while before many of us can have access to it. But what does that rollout look like at the county level and for Cook County Health?
So obviously, we all know that they, start with people working, medical professionals with COVID patients, and then, other medical professionals and nursing homes, and we roll from there, first responders. The exciting thing was today, we got the first vaccine at Cook County Hospital, which was totally thrilling. And I mean, look, Cook County Hospital is on the front lines. These are doctors and nurses and others that are serving, everyone who comes through the door, regardless of whether or not they can have insurance. And it's at a moment like this where we realize you need a good, strong public health and public hospital to protect all of us.
And tell us a little bit about that. Like, how is the pandemic and the virus in treating it? How is that testing or stretching the Cook County health system?
Well, we just got a brand new CEO for the health system, but the good news is he came from a hospital in Jackson Heights, Queens, which was literally the epicenter of the coronavirus when it first started. So we feel really lucky that we have someone who's got that kind of experience. But it's pushing to the limit the doctors and nurses. I mean, for us at the hospital, nurses can leave because there are so many great opportunities. We have to rely on agency services. That makes it really tough. And then, it ends up being a bidding war. So everyone is really pushed to the limit. And we're in a public system where the money only comes if we need it from taxpayers.
Yeah, and that CEO, Israel Rocha, he's only been there just less than 2 weeks.
Yes, he started 2 weeks. But like I said, he had a running start in exposure to corona, which is really the biggest test right now.
Last month, Cook County was able to pass a budget. You all were able to do that without a tax hike, but it's not looking pretty for so many municipalities and for governments. Do you expect that will be necessary further down the road?
I'm not sure. One thing I think we have to be really proud about the county, and I give President Preckwinkle and her team a ton of credit. We took a lot of hits early, and we made some hard decisions early. Not only did we not have to raise taxes, but we also continue to contribute additionally to the pension to shore it up. So now we have the best funded pension kind of of all the public sector agencies. So we've made some hard decisions, and that's borne out this year.
How would you say the virus is impacting economic development in your district?
Tremendously. I mean, first of all, the North Lakefront and the North Side and Northwest Side have a ton of restaurants. They have a ton of small businesses. Many of them have been hurt. My own, my sister and brother-in-law started the pandemic with 4 restaurants. Now they're down to 2, hoping to make it through to the summer. So it's had a big impact. On the county as a whole, we were down over $200 million, and that was going into the fall. And so all the taxes that collected on restaurants and drinks and parking didn't come. And it also means that certain economic activity slows down, and that's, a loss of jobs.
You gave the example of your family's restaurants that used to have 4, now they only have 2. What do we know about how other businesses in your district have fared?
So Sauganash has done fairly well. They've been able to hold on. You see a lot of closures of the small businesses along, if you look at the major corridors on Clark and other places, tiny mom and pop shops have had a hard time. And the longer the restaurants are closed, their likelihood of reopening is much more slim.
What kind of resources would you like to see to help support those businesses?
Well, obviously, we're all looking to Washington because this is an absolutely unprecedented national event. And we saw how when the first stimulus came through, it started to shore things up. People were working, other commerce was taking place. Hopefully, we're close, but Friday the government technically shuts down. And are they going to be able to get a deal before then? But I think that is our clear expectation of the federal government.
Okay, and just, I think we've got about 30 seconds. You're working on a project with the Land Bank to redevelop homes for formerly incarcerated women and their children.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the Cook County Land Bank, we started after the foreclosure crisis. There was a ton of vacant homes in neighborhoods all over Chicago. We clear title, clear taxes. We've recruited small local developers, and they're redeveloping those homes. An especially fabulous project now is when, often when women leave prison, they don't have anywhere to go and they want to be with their children. We have pulled together houses from the land bank, formerly vacant. They're being redeveloped by a cadre of female developers, and these women are going to be able to move in with their children after leaving jail. And the exciting thing is that's the best test of stability, is do you have a place to go to live?
Sounds like a future story. All right.
Yes, thank you. I
10th
hope so.
District Cook County Commissioner Bridget Gaynor, thank you so much
Thanks,
for joining
Brandis,
us.
I appreciate it.
All right, in Paris, we'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Prentice, thanks. We'll check in with you in just a bit. Up next, pretty on the outside, but not sure if we can say the same about the inside. An all-new Ask Jeffrey on the strikingly ornate history of Chicago's utility buildings.
Ask Jeffrey is brought to you in part by BMO Harris Bank.
Wow, you ready?
Yeah, let me just grab my wallet.
Uh-oh, I've seen this before. Wallet way too big, skinny jeans too skinny.
I'll just carry it.
Before you break something, you should know you don't actually need a wallet. With BMO Harris, you can just take cash out with your phone. Or if you need to, you can pay them with Zelle. That works? Yeah. You're stuck, aren't you? Smile. Woo! Those jeans are way too tight.
That feeling you get when no wallet is no big deal. That's the BMO effect.
When it comes to designing buildings, form may follow function, but that doesn't mean function has to be without form. Jeffrey Bayer joins us with a story of the O'Brien Water Reclamation Plant and other ornamented utility buildings in this week's Ask Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going?
Oh, great, Paris.
All right, I love these utility buildings, so this is exciting. We've got a letter from Patrick Moorhead from Deerfield saying there is a beautiful building that appears to be from a different era on the northwest corner of Howard and McCormick Boulevard. The structure is maybe used for water filtration or reclamation. The building looks like it might have had a different owner at one time, or perhaps was intentioned for a purpose other than it currently serves. What is the history of this elegant building from yesteryear?
Well, yes, this building is in fact part of a massive wastewater treatment facility called the O'Brien Water Reclamation Plant in Skokie, which is near the borders of Lincolnwood and Chicago. It's operated by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. That's a mouthful, shortened as MWRD. It's definitely quite ornate for a place that treats sewage. It comes from a time when utilitarian buildings were given some design flair. I, in fact, used to pass this building every day driving my young daughters to day camp, and one of them told me that some of the kids call it the Stinky Castle, or even better, the Poo Palace. The facility takes in and cleans around 230 million gallons a day of wastewater from our bathrooms, kitchen sinks, and storm sewers, but it does not actually produce drinking water. It just cleans wastewater enough so that it can be released safely into the river system. The ornamented building that our viewer asked about is known as the Pump and Blower Building. And as you can see here, it's full of sewage pumps that lift wastewater into the plant. The blowers in this building provide compressed air for a biological treatment process that helps remove pollutants from the water, and we'll talk about that later. And no, the building has never been anything but a wastewater treatment facility, although when it opened in 1928, the MWRD did have a different name. It was called the Chicago Sanitary District.
I've done stories on this whole process over the years, but remind us how that water gets cleaned exactly.
Well, it's actually really fascinating. Water enters the facility, wastewater. First, it's filtered to remove debris, and then it flows through a series of tanks that remove oils and fats and separate out heavy organic matter. That's a euphemism. Air is then pumped through the water in aeration tanks to encourage the growth of certain good microbes that essentially eat bacteria and other matter. And then the final step in the process, O'Brien claims to have the largest ultraviolet disinfection facility in the US. And this is a new thing in the process. Powerful ultraviolet lights neutralize bacteria in the water before releasing it into the adjacent North Shore Channel. And the MWRD also has a process here and also at their plant in Stickney that reclaims nutrients from the water like phosphorus and nitrogen that can cause toxic algae blooms. And it converts those materials into this stuff. Let me see if you can, I don't know if you can see that. This fertilizer that actually brings in some revenue to the MWRD.
And Jeffrey, you know, you mentioned that this building never had any other use. It's always been the Pooh Palace, for lack of a better term. So it's quite attractive for having such a kind of a gritty function to it.
Well, right. As I mentioned, it comes from a time when even the most utilitarian buildings had panache. And so that sort of inspired us to share just a few others quickly with you, some other examples from around Chicago, like this ComEd substation on Dearborn Street downtown across from the Picasso and Daley Plaza. I love this Art Deco style muscle man with his fists full of lightning proudly represents the electrical machinery hidden inside. Another Art Deco standout, literally, is the Union Station Powerhouse. People on my boat tour sometimes ask if this is from the cover of a Pink Floyd album.
Oh, yeah.
That was a power station in London. This old coal-fired power plant once provided energy to Union Station and the surrounding infrastructure, but since it closed in 2011, it's actually fallen under the threat of demolition from its current owner, which is Amtrak. Others are more tucked away in city neighborhoods, like this neoclassical style Thomas Jefferson Pumping Station in Lincoln Square. It's operated by the city's Department of Water Management, which, unlike the O'Brien plant we saw earlier, is actually part of the system that provides drinking water to homes on the north side. There are prairie-style substations around Chicago, but take heart, making utility buildings beautiful is not just a thing of the past. On the University of Chicago campus, for just one example, actually two examples, are these two contemporary, sleekly designed mechanical buildings by Chicago architect Helmut Jahn. This is the translucent South Campus chiller plant, which, contrary to most utility buildings, leaves the machinery exposed for the outside world to see. And there's a similar idea on display in the West Campus combined utility plant at University of Chicago with its color-coded steam and chilling equipment, again, visible through these glass windows.
Form and function in these buildings. All right, thank you, Jeffrey.
My pleasure.
And don't forget that you can visit our website for more details about the O'Brien Water Reclamation Plant and Chicago's utility buildings. And while you're there, don't forget to submit your own question to Jeffrey Baer. That's at WTTW.com/AskJeffrey. And now we check back in with Brandis Friedman, who spent the day reporting in Christmassy Sauganash on Chicago's far northwest side as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Brandis.
Christmassy it is, Paris. Earlier today, I spoke with Michelle Watley. She's the president of the Sauganash Community Association, and I actually started by asking her about how this holiday tradition began in Sauganash, of the decorations.
Historically, Sauganash, Edgebrook, Lincolnwood, just north of here, I think since about the 60s, people have come to this area. It's very accessible. It's a small neighborhood. You can drive up and down the streets, and we're a small community here in the kind of northwest corner of the city, but I think we're small and mighty, and we do things big, and so that's why people come out. We're known for the Christmas lights, our 4th of July, our Halloween, whatever it is, we do it big, and so it draws people in.
And your neighbors, your Lincolnwood neighbors just to the north, they do it big as well.
Yes.
Is there ever any friendly competition there?
You know what? I think, I have spoken with some of the other neighbors, and a lot of people in the Sauganash area sometimes have moved there. It's a migratory tradition, I think. It used to be Sauganash, Lincolnwood. It's kind of has taken over some of it.
Do you think the decorations have a little bit more meaning this year, considering the coronavirus and the pandemic has really changed everybody's holiday plans?
Oh, absolutely. If you would come in our community at any other time of the year, you would see people out everywhere. And, we're a gathering community. It's, in the summer, it's block parties and it's barbecues and kids everywhere. And we've had to really adjust. So, you know, like with anything, I think it's what can we do where we can stay distant but enjoy ourselves, and getting in the car or taking a nice walk and going around and enjoying the lights. That's been one thing. We're all trying to adapt and find new ways to kind of entertain ourselves.
And as you just said, of course, this community has a lot of, families and children, just the two schools, but still, in a small community, that's going to mean you've got a lot of kids here. How have families and children here been impacted by the coronavirus?
Oh, I mean, and I have to tell you, everybody has, it's been hard, and we're all in the same boat, but by the same token, I think everybody has their individual challenges. We've had businesses that have suffered and loss of jobs, and the kids. I mean, it's been hard. Some of the CPS kids have been out of school. I'm in front of Queens right now, and Queens has in-person instruction. They also have remote instruction. It's just we're used to gathering, and we've had to pull back on that for the greater good. So it's been really hard.
So obviously you just mentioned both of the two schools here, Sauganash Elementary and of course Queens, where we are right now. And there are different offerings between these two schools. One is part of the Archdiocese, one is a CPS school, one is remote learning, one is in person.
Yeah.
Things are going to change and shift a bit in January. How have parents in the community been sort of juggling these challenges with remote learning and the different schedules?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a challenge. I have, especially in our neighborhood, I would say it's about 50-50. So, I have neighbors on my street who have CPS students, and you have to, we have some parents working from home, also trying to manage remote learning. Even with children in school instruction, it's different. I have a second grader, and he'll say to me, well, we can't play at recess like we used to. We can't go to lunch. But that's what we're making work right now. I don't know. It's been hard for everybody. I know we're all anxious to get back, and that's why we're doing what we do. That's why we're pulling back, and everybody's sacrificing a little bit so that we can get back out there, because I know that's what we all want.
And that's probably all the more reason for the folks in this community to decorate the way they do. At least they've all got something pretty to look at a time that might be tough for people. But for now, Paris, we'll send it back to you.
It is certainly a feast for the eyes. All right, Brandis, thanks so much. And up next, how a mural is lifting healthcare workers' spirits. But first, we take a look at the weather.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part through the generous support of the Julius Frankel Foundation.
As the city grapples with yet another COVID-19 wave, a healthcare center on the northwest side is encouraging the neighborhood to remain resilient with the help of a public art piece. Arts correspondent Angel Ito recently brought us this story on our Chicago Tonight Black Voices program. Here's another look.
In collaboration with the Chicago Public Art Group, visual artist Ramon Static is bridging the gap between healthcare providers and the community they serve with a mural reminding them they're all in this together.
We're all connected at the end of the day. And what I mean by that is that, granted, these individuals are healthcare workers when they're here, but they go home, there's someone's mom, someone's dad right there.
Commissioned by Prime Care Health, the facility has been working to meet the influx of COVID testing demands that have increased within the past month.
Within the last few weeks, I've seen an increase from 7 to 10 tests being done whenever we were here to all of a sudden needing to open up to at least 30, almost 40 slots per day for our testing.
Static's thank you to their commitment can be seen in an image of one of the facility's physician assistants nestled between other members of the neighborhood.
So how would you say this mural is providing relief for healthcare workers that are now seeing it on a daily basis?
Actually brightens up the community. Most of us walk in and for the last few days have been looking at the different pieces as they're coming together, and it gives us a bit more color and a little bit more brightness throughout the day.
The bottom line is that what they're doing helps society stay together right there, and they're almost like the fabrics of society.
The public art piece also reflects the area's different cultures and ethnicities.
So it starts off with the two dancing ladies with both the Polish word and the Spanish word familia next to them to kind of identify the culture they're connected with. Next to the Mexican lady dancing, it's actually supposed to be like the eclectic Caribbean black dude. It's an aesthetic of African culture that blends into Latin culture right there, right? So in other words, like, because I got a lot of homies that's Jamaican, Dominican, Haitian right there, where, they're black, but they're Latin at the same time right there. So it kind of blends in culturally together right there. And I kind of want to highlight that, them being who they are as a result of the American cultural melting pot right there. It ends off with it saying, our strength is our community right there, which is the bigger picture, right? So like, in other words, that speaks volumes, in regards to the diversity of the community. The different variables of the community is what gives the community its power.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
If you're interested in checking out the mural in person, it's located at Prime Care Health in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood on Belmont. We have more information on our website. And that is our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
And you can also get the show via podcast and on the PBS video app. And be sure to tune in tomorrow at 7 for the Weekend Review.
And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Closed captioning is made possible in part by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.